schneller! Ich versuche es! Hold the vehicle!
Gunner, 50 meters. Target the tree line.
Achtung! Tja, Ziel auf 2 Uhr!
Feuer.
December 1944. The dense Ardennes forest lies shrouded in early morning fog. Snow clings to twisted branches. The air is thick with cold, the silence punctuated by distant artillery rumble. Along narrow, mud-laden roads, German Panzer IVs and Panthers trundle forward, their engines growling, treads crunching frozen earth. Inside the steel hulls, crewmen huddle in tight, metallic compartments, eyes scanning the tree line, hearts hammering. A sudden crack. A faint puff of smoke rises from the underbrush. A bazooka round streaks through the gray dawn, hitting a tank's side. The armor shudders. Inside, men are thrown off balance. The smell of cordite fills the air. Fear flashes across faces hardened by years of battle. Tanks lurch, engines roar, and chaos ripples through the column. From the shadows, unseen teams of Allied infantry melt back into the woods, ready to strike again. The forest itself seems alive, each tree a potential threat. For the German crews, the Ardennes is no longer just a battlefield. It is a cage, and the hunters have the advantage. By late 1944, the German war machine was stretched across multiple fronts. Tanks, Panzer IVs, Panthers, and the feared Tiger IIs formed the backbone of their armored divisions. These machines symbolized dominance on the battlefield, combining firepower, armor, and mobility. German tank doctrine emphasized shock action, break through infantry lines, exploit gaps, and annihilate enemy formations. Crews prided themselves on precision, coordination, and mechanical mastery. Yet the Allied forces had adapted. American and British infantry had been experimenting with new ways to neutralize the armored menace. Among the most revolutionary was the bazooka, the M1 and its later variants. Lightweight, portable, and surprisingly powerful, the bazooka allowed a single infantryman to engage a tank from cover. Its shaped charge could pierce the thick armor that had once seemed impenetrable, making forests, towns, and hedgerows lethal for advancing armored columns. In the Ardennes and the forests of Western Europe, terrain favored ambushes. Narrow roads flanked by trees limited maneuverability, while mud and snow slowed heavy tanks. German reconnaissance often missed small, hidden teams. By November and December of 1944, intelligence reports began noting increased Allied use of bazooka squads to halt armored advances. The stage was set. German crews, confident in their steel monsters, were about to encounter a weapon that turned forests into deadly traps. Every creak of a branch, every faint rustle could signal the unseen threat lying in wait. Bazooka teams were organized to maximize surprise. Typically, 2 to 3 soldiers would operate together, one aiming, one loading, one providing cover. They moved with the infantry, trained to fire from concealed positions, then retreat before counterfire could target them. In training, emphasis was placed on patience, timing, and rapid relocation, a tactic that would terrify even the most experienced tank crews. The weapon itself was simple but effective. A 2.36-inch tube, firing a rocket with a shaped charge, could penetrate up to 3 inches of armor at close range. Crews learned quickly that a side or rear hit could immobilize or destroy a tank. In the cramped forest roads of the Ardennes, even Panther and Tiger tanks, superior in firepower, could be neutralized by teams armed with this weapon. German intelligence underestimated the impact of small infantry teams. Many reports highlighted overwhelming firepower and massed armor as the decisive factors in battle, while the bazooka's low-tech design was dismissed as a minor threat. Yet battlefield report from December 1944 began to show the contrary. Tanks damaged, crews killed or wounded, advances stalled, and morale shaken. The psychological effect was immense. Tank crews, trained to expect artillery, anti-tank guns, and mines, were suddenly confronted with invisible enemies who could strike from mere meters away. Every tree became a potential ambush point, every hedge a hiding place for destruction. By the time German units reached the Ardennes offensive, the Battle of the Bulge, the Allies had refined bazooka tactics. Teams were paired with infantry, artillery observers, and even light mortars. The combined arms approach allowed small groups to punch far above their weight. German crews, accustomed to large, organized assaults, faced a new type of warfare, intimate, stealthy, and terrifyingly effective. The stage was set for a deadly confrontation where steel met stealth, and the forests themselves seemed to conspire against the armored giants. Inside a Panther or Panzer IV, space is tight and visibility limited. Crews rely on radios, hatches, and periscopes to detect threats. When a bazooka round hits nearby, the shock is both physical and mental. Men accustomed to artillery and cannon fire suddenly confront a threat that appears from nowhere. Fear spreads instantly. The unknown source of the attack, the invisibility of the shooter, and the vulnerability of their side armor. Letters and diaries from German tank crews in late 1944 describe moments of paralyzing anxiety, tension gnawing at nerves that were already frayed from months of retreat and attrition. German armored doctrine emphasized concentrated firepower and speed. Forested terrain disrupts this, forcing tanks in single file columns where a single bazooka team can delay or stop movement. Commanders were forced to adjust, deploying scouts and infantry screens, slowing advances. Bazooka ambushes forced rethinking of coordination between armor, infantry, and reconnaissance, something German forces had rarely encountered so effectively in such dense forests. The bazooka, often underestimated by German forces, was a marvel of simplicity and efficiency. It required minimal training, was portable, and could be deployed in seconds. A single hit could disable tracks, rupture fuel tanks, or destroy internal systems. Its low-tech design belied its devastating impact, forcing crews to adopt reactive strategies and altering the perceived invincibility of German armor. Commanders on both sides had to adapt rapidly. German officers struggled to maintain momentum in the Ardennes while accounting for unseen infantry threats. Reports to higher command emphasized the danger of small teams and recommended integrating scouts and infantry support more closely with tanks. Allied leaders, by contrast, encouraged decentralized operations for bazooka teams, granting autonomy to exploit weaknesses in armor lines. From the Allied perspective, bazooka teams were low-cost, high-impact units. Their success relied on stealth, timing, and terrain advantage. Infantry understood the morale effect on German crews was as significant as the physical damage. Observing tanks hesitate, immobilized by small squads, became a psychological victory that amplified battlefield success. The presence of bazooka teams introduced pervasive anxiety into German armored units. Trust in armor as an invulnerable weapon eroded. Every advance required heightened alertness, consuming mental energy and slowing decision-making. The forest was no longer a backdrop. It was a participant, shaping fear and uncertainty, transforming armored dominance into vulnerability. December 21st, 1944. In a narrow Ardennes corridor, a battalion of Panthers advances. Visibility is low. A sudden pop echoes from the underbrush. A bazooka round slams into the side of a leading tank. Track and engine are damaged. The crew inside struggles to regain control. Smoke fills the compartment. The commander orders a halt. From hidden positions, more rounds strike in rapid succession. The forest erupts with sound. Cracking wood, explosions, shouted commands. Tank after tank becomes a target. Some maneuver, some are hit outright. German infantry attempting to support armor are pinned by machine gun fire from the same concealed teams. Within minutes, the advance collapses. The intensity is unmatched. Crews report near total panic in logs. Fear, disorientation, and sudden vulnerability. The coordination of bazooka teams with supporting fire proves decisive. Tanks, once considered unstoppable, are forced into defensive maneuvers, retreating under pressure. The ambush had been brutal and precise. By late morning, the narrow Ardennes road was littered with smoke, twisted metal, and shattered treads. German tank crews, once confident in the invincibility of their armor, now faced the stark reality. Even the mightiest Panther or Tiger could be felled by a few well-trained bazooka teams hidden in the trees. Logs from the 2nd Panzer Division described the scene in stark terms. One commander wrote, "We moved through the forest like giants blindfolded. Every crack, every rustle of a branch made hearts leap. The forest itself seemed to fight us. Tank after tank had been disabled. Not destroyed outright in some cases, but immobilized, stranded, and vulnerable. Engineers and recovery teams were forced to drag vehicles back under fire, often exposing themselves to more bazooka rounds. From the Allied perspective, the ambush was textbook execution. Small squads had moved stealthily, firing from concealed positions and immediately relocating. Some had coordinated shots with supporting artillery, marking smoke targets to disorient the crews further. Their objective was not merely destruction of tanks. It was disruption, confusion, and instilling a sense of vulnerability among German armored units. The psychological impact was immediate and lasting. Tank crews hesitated to advance, scanning the forest with obsessive caution. Commanders found that traditional orders, push forward, break the line, were now tempered by the invisible threat. Speed, once a German advantage, became a liability. Hesitation, once a flaw, became a necessity. The Ardennes dense forest had transformed from a neutral battlefield into a psychological trap. Casualty reports from the day highlighted the disproportionate effect of small teams. 4 or 5 bazooka squads, each no larger than a dozen men, had disrupted an entire battalion of tanks. Several tanks were immobilized for hours, while others were abandoned due to fear of additional unseen attacks. Crew injuries range from minor concussions caused by near misses to fatalities from direct hits. Every encounter left men shaken, their confidence in armor shaken as profoundly as their bodies were battered. Even German commanders acknowledged the turning point. In a debriefing dated December 22nd, one officer noted, "Our tanks are no longer untouchable. The forests conceal enemies that strike like shadows. Our approach must change. Caution, infantry screens, and reconnaissance are now as vital as the tanks themselves." Orders were immediately issued to slow advances, integrate infantry patrols more closely with armor, and scout every kilometer before moving heavy vehicles. The ambush also shifted operational tempo. Where German armored units had relied on rapid penetration to exploit weak points, they now moved deliberately, checking every tree line, every hedgerow. Momentum slowed, allowing Allied forces to fortify defensive positions, reposition artillery, and coordinate counterattacks. What might have been a swift armored breakthrough had become a costly, drawn-out advance. where small infantry teams repeatedly proved their deadly efficiency. For the crews trapped inside their tanks, fear was compounded by isolation. Radios transmitted orders, but the forest interfered with lines of sight and communication. Every command seemed distant, every perceived threat immediate. A tank commander wrote, "We felt the walls of metal around us, yet they could not protect. The forest itself conspired with invisible enemies." These words would later serve historians as a window into the psychological toll of modern mechanized warfare. By nightfall, the battlefield bore the marks of both destruction and strategic shift. German losses were tangible: disabled tanks, scattered supplies, and wounded crews. But the most profound effect was invisible: fear, caution, and the urgent need for doctrinal change. The Ardennes had demonstrated that armored supremacy was conditional, dependent not solely on steel and firepower, but on terrain, tactics, and the ingenuity of the infantry. The forest was silent again, smoke curling into the winter sky. Bazooka teams had vanished as quickly as they had appeared, leaving behind confusion, damaged tanks, and a lingering echo of an idea that would forever alter armored warfare. The battle's immediate outcome was measured not just in tanks lost, but in a hard-earned lesson. No machine, no matter how formidable, is invulnerable when ingenuity and courage find the gaps. This ambush, executed with precision, would resonate through the remaining months of the Ardennes offensive. German tank crews, haunted by the memory of the forest shadows, adjusted tactics, slow and cautious. Allied planners, emboldened, replicated the method elsewhere, proving that small teams could challenge even the most powerful armor when terrain and timing were exploited perfectly. The Ardennes had become a crucible, forging a new understanding of infantry armor warfare, and the psychological scars of that December morning would last long after the last shot was fired. The ambushes delayed German advances in key Ardennes sectors. Tanks immobilized or destroyed reduced operational mobility, forcing adjustments in planning. Allied forces exploited these delays to consolidate positions, coordinate artillery, and reinforce infantry lines. Even after the immediate engagement, German units adopted more cautious tactics, integrating infantry screens and scouting, but momentum had shifted. Tank crews reported lingering fear of unseen infantry. Diaries and letters referenced tension in every forest or hedgerow. This experience influenced post-battle reports and doctrinal revisions. Allied commanders documented the effectiveness of bazooka teams, advocating for continued use alongside infantry. For German forces, the experience emphasized the vulnerability of even their most advanced armor to inexpensive, mobile infantry weapons, a lesson that would echo beyond Ardennes. By evening, German units have sustained significant damage. Logs indicate multiple disabled tanks, several wounded crewmen, and a stalled offensive. Commanders realize their traditional approach is insufficient. Debriefings emphasize adapting to forested terrain and the unseen threat. Allied reports praise the success of coordinated bazooka teams, highlighting how small, mobile squads can achieve disproportionate impact. This confrontation signals a turning point. The German army, for all its armored might, cannot ignore infantry innovation. Tank crews are now acutely aware that dominance requires constant vigilance. The psychological toll lingers longer than the material damage, shaping how armored units engage in forested or urban terrain for the remainder of the war. The confrontation between German tanks and bazooka teams in the Ardennes illustrates the evolving nature of warfare. Technological superiority is only decisive when coupled with adaptation and awareness of new threats. Small, mobile infantry teams transform the battlefield, showing that ingenuity and tactics can counter even the most formidable machines. For the men inside the tanks, the forest became a theater of fear, uncertainty, and tension, highlighting the human dimension of mechanized warfare. For Allied strategists, the success of bazooka teams reinforced the value of decentralized initiative, stealth, and coordination. History remembers the Ardennes not just for grand armored clashes, but for the quiet effectiveness of small, determined squads hidden in snow-laden forests. It is a testament to how innovation, courage, and adaptability can redefine combat. In the end, the story is not merely about machines or firepower. It is about men confronting fear, technology meeting ingenuity, and the relentless evolution of warfare itself.